In the world of organized crime, the stories of fathers taking matters into their own hands in pursuit of justice are both heartbreaking and remarkable. These men, driven by love and fueled by an unrelenting desire for justice, have gone to extreme lengths to track down their children's killers when the law failed them. In this account, we delve into the tragic tale of Eduardo Gallo, a father who refused to accept the authorities' inaction after his daughter was kidnapped and murdered by a cartel, and Manuel Torres Felix, a notorious cartel leader whose violent rampage following the death of his son set off a wave of destruction and terror. Eduardo Gallo, a father's relentless quest for justice. The quiet town of Tepoztlán, Mexico, a place known for its scenic beauty and tranquility, became the setting for an unimaginable tragedy in the year 2000. Eduardo Gallo, a successful consultant and family man, was living what most would call an ordinary and content life. He had worked hard to provide for his family and had never anticipated that his world would be ripped apart by a brutal act of violence. Eduardo's daughter, Paula Gallo, was a vibrant and lively 25-year-old with a bright future ahead of her. She had a zest for life, an infectious smile, and was beloved by her friends and family. The family had a weekend home in Tepoztlán, a small town that served as their retreat from the hustle and bustle of Mexico City. It was supposed to be their sanctuary, a place filled with memories and joy. But in July 2000, their happiness was shattered. On what began as an ordinary day, Paula disappeared without a trace. Panic quickly set in as Eduardo and his wife realized that their beloved daughter had been kidnapped. The silence that filled their home was unbearable, but soon, the kidnappers made their demands known. They wanted a ransom of $118,500 and a collection of jewelry. Eduardo, driven by the sheer desperation to save his daughter's life, did everything he could to comply. He scrambled to gather the money and handed it over, clinging to the hope that Paula would return to them unharmed. Days turned into a nightmare as the family awaited news. But the hope that Eduardo had clung to was cruelly ripped away. Just a week later, Paula's body was discovered. She had been shot twice and left to die, her future stolen by the cold hands of violence. The devastation felt by Eduardo and his family was unimaginable. Their lives, once filled with happiness and hope, were now consumed by grief and despair. Authorities moved quickly to apprehend 3 suspects connected to the crime. But the person who had pulled the trigger, the man who had killed Eduardo's daughter, was still at large. And it soon became evident that the Mexican justice system, plagued by corruption and inefficiency, was not going to deliver the justice Paula deserved. As days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months, the case began to grow cold. Eduardo could not, and would not, accept this. He vowed to do whatever it took to find his daughter's killer, even if it meant taking matters into his own hands. And that is exactly what he did. Eduardo closed his consulting firm and dedicated his life to seeking justice for his daughter. He transformed from a grieving father into a man on a mission, someone who was determined to uncover the truth and bring Paula's killer to justice. Eduardo's journey into the criminal underworld of Mexico was fraught with danger and uncertainty. Kidnappings were rampant, with up to 90% of them going unreported. But Eduardo was undeterred. Using his skills as a consultant, he began to pore over phone records, trace leads, and map out the connections between the suspects. His home, once a place of laughter and family gatherings, became his command center, his base of operations for his one-man investigation. For a year, Eduardo worked tirelessly. He combed through the evidence, followed every lead, and slowly began to piece together the puzzle of his daughter's final days. His breakthrough came when he traced a series of phone calls made shortly after Paula's kidnapping. The calls led him to a payphone in Tepoztlán, a seemingly insignificant detail that would prove crucial in his quest for justice. Eduardo staked out the payphone, knowing that patience would be his greatest ally. Days turned into weeks as he watched and waited. And then, one day, his patience paid off. The man he had been hunting, Francisco Zamora Arano, approached the payphone. Eduardo's heart raced as he recognized the face of the man who had murdered his daughter. It was a moment of both triumph and heartache, triumph because he had found his daughter's killer, but heartache because nothing could bring Paula back. With meticulous planning, Eduardo coordinated with the local authorities to set a trap. Arano was captured without incident, and in the interrogation room, faced with the overwhelming evidence Eduardo had gathered, he confessed to the crime. His confession was cold and callous, a reminder of the brutality with which Paula's life had been taken. But for Eduardo, it was the moment he had fought so hard for. He had done what seemed impossible, he had brought his daughter's killer to justice. Eduardo's story is one of love, grief, and determination. He refused to let his daughter's memory fade into darkness, and in doing so, he became a real-life vigilante. His unwavering pursuit of the truth serves as a testament to the power of a father's love and the lengths to which a parent will go to seek justice for their child. Though Paula's life was cut short, Eduardo ensured that her killer would face the consequences of his actions, and in doing so, he honored her memory in the most profound way possible. Manuel Torres Felix, a cartel leader's descent into vengeance. While Eduardo Gallo's story is one of personal justice, the tale of Manuel Torres Felix, a notorious cartel leader, is one of unbridled violence and retribution. Manuel Torres Felix, also known as LM1 or El Ondetto, was a high-ranking figure in the Sinaloa cartel, one of the most powerful and violent criminal organizations in Mexico. His life was steeped in bloodshed, but it was the death of his son that pushed him over the edge, setting off a chain of events that would leave a trail of destruction in its wake. In April 2008, Manuel's 20-year-old son, Atanasio Torres Acosta, was gunned down in the streets of Culiacan, Sinaloa. Atanasio's death was a calculated ambush, believed to have been orchestrated by the rival Beltran Leyva cartel. For Manuel, the loss of his son was more than a personal tragedy, it was an affront to his power and a challenge to the dominance of the Sinaloa cartel. In the brutal world of drug trafficking, such challenges could not go unanswered. Consumed by grief and rage, Manuel embarked on a bloody campaign of vengeance. He targeted not only those responsible for his son's death but anyone who dared stand in his way. His actions were swift and brutal. It is said that the men who had killed Atanasio were abducted, taken to Manuel's house, and tortured to death. Their deaths were not just acts of revenge, they were messages, sent to the entire criminal underworld, that Manuel Torres Felix would stop at nothing to maintain his control. The violence that followed Atanasio's death was relentless. The streets of Sinaloa, already plagued by cartel warfare, became even more dangerous as Manuel's enforcers, known as sicarios, unleashed a wave of terror. Innocent bystanders, rival gang members, and anyone caught in the crossfire became victims of the escalating conflict. The once covert operations of the cartel were thrust into the public eye as the brutality of the drug war spilled over into the lives of ordinary citizens. Manuel's reign of terror was not just about avenging his son's death, it was a calculated move to reassert the cartel's dominance. In the world of organized crime, power is everything, and Manuel was determined to show that he was still in control. But his violent rampage could not last forever. In October 2012, the Mexican army launched a raid on Manuel Torres Felix. After a fierce gun battle in the town of Oso Viejo, Manuel was killed. His death was as violent as the life he had led, his body riddled with bullets, a stark end to a man who had ruled with an iron fist. The aftermath of his death sent shockwaves through the Sinaloa cartel. Manuel had been a key figure in the organization, a close confidant of cartel leader Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. His death dealt a significant blow to the cartel's internal structure. Reports soon surfaced that Manuel's death may not have been entirely unexpected. Rumors circulated that El Chapo himself had set Manuel up, believing that his violent actions were attracting too much attention to the cartel. If true, it would not be the first time that internal rivalries within the cartel had led to betrayal and death. The story of Manuel Torres Felix serves as a grim reminder of the fragility of power in the world of organized crime. Despite his position as a feared and respected cartel leader, Manuel was not immune to the destabilizing effects of personal loss. His descent into violence following his son's death not only cost him his life but also destabilized the criminal empire he had helped build. The stories of Eduardo Gallo and Manuel Torres Felix are starkly different, yet they share a common thread, the lengths to which a father